Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Sideris, the Senior Platform Manager at 43 North. I'm excited to introduce our guest today. We are joined by Dom Costanzo, who is the VP of Portfolio at 43 North. Fun fact, he is my boss, so this is a very exciting chat we will have. And let's give Dom a big welcome. And as we start off, why don't you tell us how you came to be here at 43 North and in Buffalo and a little bit of your journey to today.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Cindy. So a little bit about my journey. I'm coming from Richmond, Virginia. So honestly, New York, this is the first place I've ever lived that isn't Richmond, Virginia. I've had a couple brief stints, out of state. I was up in Lake Placid actually with the U.S. bobsled and skeleton team, but it was kind of temporary housing. It was never a permanent move. So another fun fact, both my parents are from Buffalo, New York. So I'm not like a total outsider to the city. I've been visiting my whole life. But born and raised in Richmond, Virginia, went to school at VCU, ended up working for VCU, really started my career there. At the time I was splitting time between VCU and a corporate incubator called the Dominion Energy Innovation Center. So I was running a startup incubator for them. I was working part-time at VCU in a program management role, doing a lot of like accelerator program management, and really just grew in my responsibilities at the university, kind of worked my way through the tech transfer office, ended up being the new venture manager there, focused on spinning companies out of their IP portfolio. And then more recently, kind of going back to 2018, 2019, I got pulled over into working with the university health system as part of a larger innovation strategy where I was really focused on their corporate venture program, helped work with some of their leadership to establish a seed fund in Richmond, Virginia. They had also invested in a couple of other funds. They were a limited partner in a number of funds. And so really just kind of bringing some structure to that program and doing a lot of other business development, really focused on early stage technologies. And so when, this was earlier in the year, been there for a while and was just kind of like, hey, what's next? What's new? Kind of wanted to get out of Richmond, Virginia. Like I said, grew up there, lived there for a while, was familiar with 43 North, actually going back to 2015, a really good friend of mine, two good friends of mine, they were co-founders of one of the portfolio companies. They took runner-up in the competition in 2015. And so that kind of put 43 North on my radar. And obviously when you operate in this space, you're very much aware of 43 North as a program and an organization. And so it's just following, 43 North on LinkedIn and saw that the role was open and really just kind of spoke to like the type of work that I wanted to be doing that I felt like I was moving away from, apply. Fast forward, land the role, and we're here. We're a month in, and yeah, living in Buffalo, New York, which, like I said, coming from Richmond, Virginia, having always visited. I don't know. I never really thought that I would live here, but it's really good to be here. It's really good to be here. So.
That's great. Well, it's good to have you here. We're excited to have you as part of the team. What was the company that your friends had started?
Yeah, the company was Painless 1099. So I remember it was such a big deal when they took, I believe it was runner-up. I mean, don't quote me, I guess we're kind of on the record, but I believe they took runner-up. And yeah, I just remember like watching the competition on YouTube. I don't think the production, well, this was like 2015 YouTube. I don't know if it was live streamed or if it was like, I don't know, just
someone's video.
But we were so excited for them. Like it was the first company that I knew who had won a prize of that magnitude, and just moving to Buffalo and kind of the fanfare that went along with it. It was just really cool to see. So
that's great. So obviously you're coming from Richmond, which is kind of a smaller emerging tech ecosystem as well, maybe similar to Buffalo, but what are your thoughts just on those kind of places for startups? Like having been at VCU in Richmond, seeing how startups are growing there and what that ecosystem is like, and now in your short time in Buffalo, but kind of seeing how things are here. Like, what are your thoughts on those emerging ecosystems and how they can just be a good resource for founders or kind of a pro for founders in a way?
Sure. Yeah. Well, growing up in one, I'm slightly biased to kind of that like emerging tech, ecosystem or second tier cities, however you want to kind of classify it. I don't even really like the term second tier like cities, but they're smaller markets, right? Richmond is very comparable. Richmond and Buffalo are very comparable in size from like a population standpoint. And, in Virginia, you've got Washington, D.C., which is like the major tech ecosystem. And then, in New York, you've got New York City, and then you've got Buffalo and Western New York. And I think, the value proposition of a city like Buffalo or Richmond is like you can just go so much deeper with the relationships. We've in Richmond and in Buffalo, you've got great, education systems. You've got great universities. There's talent that exists here. Buffalo's unique because it's so close to Canada, and Toronto's a major ecosystem right up to the north, and you've got Waterloo. But then in Buffalo, what I saw in Buffalo that I didn't see in Richmond was you've got so much support from the entrepreneurial support organizations and from the state, from ESD. Like there's such a commitment to Western New York that I don't think a lot of states have or like appreciate. I mean, certainly, in Richmond, we had a level of support, but not to the degree that Buffalo has. And, with 43 North, you've got so much momentum because you've got this track record of success. You've got a portfolio of 64 companies. And that creates a level of momentum, not just for the organization, but for the ecosystem, for the region, for the state. And, in an environment where things are less favorable, that momentum's it's a big kind of value driver moving into the future. And so I just think for founders, you can be a small fish in a big pond in a place like New York City, or you can come to a place like Buffalo and really just go deep within the ecosystem and get a degree of support that you wouldn't otherwise get. And I think that's, for the right type of founders, like it's a huge catalyst for them and their business. I firmly believe that. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think something that we always try and drive home to our founders, and, we've heard from our most recent year 8 cohort, who's only been here a few months as well, is like they thought they knew what they were getting by moving to Buffalo and joining 43 North, but like they didn't realize that it would be like such a family atmosphere, that the community really rallies around and supports them. So it's great to hear that you noticed that as well. What would you say are maybe some ways that an accelerator like 43 North, or just having more startups in a city, can help foster economic growth in that way?
So, I feel pretty passionate about this topic, like just the concept of economic development and where you allocate resources, whether that be recruiting more mature companies to a region or focusing on, startups as a catalyst for economic growth. And I believe like the latter is where you want to over allocate resources, because at the end of the day, corporate longevity, if you study like the history of like the S&P 500, publicly traded companies, like that pool, that surface area is contracting. There are fewer public companies, there are fewer there's a lot more acquisitions, mergers, and so and the lifespan of those companies is decreasing decade over decade. And so if you want to realize the greatest returns as a region, as a city, it's about investing in the future. And the future is not in the companies that have been operating for 30, 40, 50 years. The future is in the companies that have been operating for 3, 4, 5 years. And so that's just where I fundamentally believe the more outsized returns are going to come from. And so, like I said, the work that, 43 North has been doing in partnership with all of their constituents in the state of New York, I think that's it. They're skating in the right direction there, right? Mm-hmm. They're, what is the term? They're going and skating to where the puck is going, yeah. Right? And so I think you want to over-index towards, supporting early stage companies versus, not to say you don't want to focus on recruiting larger companies, but if you expand your time horizons, it's certainly, outsized returns come from early stage growth. So
yeah. What would you say, just in thinking about founders we are in, a little bit of tougher economic times right now, like what advice would you have for founders who are at the seed stage and looking to raise it? What would be some good advice you could share? Because I know we have a lot of companies going through this as well, and it's tricky out there.
It is tricky. It's tough. but that environment, it creates discipline. At the end of the day, like I think market conditions, it has a greater influence on behavior than I think people want to like give it credit for. And in a period where, we're coming off like a 13-year bull market, like low interest rates, it leads to kind of growth at all costs, and that can deteriorate certain behaviors. I think people become less disciplined. I think they kind of move away from the fundamentals a bit. And so I guess my advice is just get back to the fundamentals, keep your head down, just build, right? But there's other advantages that come from kind of the conditions that we're in, one of them being talent, right? Unfortunately, there's been a lot of layoffs in the industry, but that creates kind of a glut of skilled talent that, again, as a company that, ideally is growing, that's recruiting talent, there's no longer this talent war where, people are bidding up, the cost of every position. And so, just like I see, get back to the fundamentals, keep your head down, right? Like you're in an industry that goes through cycles, right? And if you're building a company over the next 10 to 15 years, or you want to just operate in this space in perpetuity, like these are the cycles that you're going to go through. So take it as an opportunity to learn, to be more disciplined, to get back to doing what works, to focusing on profitability. And you'll be all right.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. What is one thing that you're excited to kind of do and experience this year while you're at 43 North and in Buffalo?
Oh gosh. So I'm excited to be here for Buffalo Bills season.
Yeah.
Because I think, first year living in Buffalo, I think we're gonna win the Super Bowl. So I'm gonna.
I mean, from your mouth to.
I'm just gonna put that out there. It's gonna be cool living in the city when we actually bring that home. No, I think for me, it's just immersing myself in this ecosystem. Really, like it's a totally new ecosystem for me, and everyone that I've met has been just so enthusiastic about the work that not only 43 North has been doing, but just all the activity in the space. I'm really looking forward to getting to know the individuals here in Western New York, to working with the portfolio companies, helping them, really drive business in the region, grow, source talent, and just making this home, right?
Yeah.
Like it already kind of it's starting to feel like home, right? But that just comes with time. We've already had some fun road trips, have been out to Skinny Atlas and some of our partners, out in that region. And so just getting to know, New York, Western New York, and just being involved in the ecosystem.
Love that. I want to go back a little bit to, you said you spent some time at Lake Placid at the Olympic Training Center, which is like not a small thing. Like that's, as like a former Olympic nerd where I would just watch the Olympics and like be very into that. I'm just like, that's a huge deal. And like, congratulations on that part of your life. That's awesome. What are some things that you maybe could pull from that experience, like things you've learned? You mentioned being disciplined a lot that kind of apply to that founder journey as well.
Sure. So just so the record stands, I was never, and you didn't say this, but so I was never an Olympian, right?
Right.
But I was a part of Team USA on the men's skeleton team. So it's part of the Bobsled and Skeleton Federation. So I was with that team for about 2 years. Yeah, living in the Olympic Training Center up in Lake Placid, which was like going from college to like living in another dorm, right? Like I was just like in the dorm for 6 years of my life. But it was, I believe, like 40% of like Team USA's Winter Olympians train out of Lake Placid. So it was a great experience to just be around high level talent and athletes from a number of different disciplines. And I think what, I guess getting your question was around like just things that I learned from that experience.
Sure.
Translates, having been an athlete in college, so track and field to skeleton, it's, it requires taking a long view of things and realizing that daily effort compounds over time. So like, how can you just kind of stack wins, like personally in your business, How do you get to a point of momentum working for you? You're going to have peaks and valleys, right? And, the peaks are, it's not always as high as you think. The valleys aren't always as low. And so the more you can kind of stay even keel and just working towards, whatever vision it is that you have for yourself, is ultimately how you're going to succeed. And it's a lot of daily effort, right? Because there's, startups, you get some of the most talented individuals, the smartest individuals, most driven individuals. And all you can really do is like focus on, it's a competitive environment, right? And you're going to have a lot of companies competing in the space. So you're competing for, venture capital dollars, and you just got to stay sharp, right? You got to stay sharp, and you got to get after it every single day and just compound those small daily wins over time. And hopefully that leads to success.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Like keeping your head down, doing the work, and hopefully one day it pays off over time. Getting back to, being new to Buffalo, and I'm curious about this for Richmond as well. Buffalo's food we are well known for the chicken wing, as I'm sure you are aware now. Have you tried chicken wings, or do you eat chicken wings, and do you have a go-to place yet? And then I guess following that, does Richmond have a specific food that we should know about?
So I do love chicken wings. I never had chicken wings in Richmond because chicken wings in Richmond are trash. So
shots fired.
Yeah. I always looked forward to coming to Buffalo for the chicken wings. Historically, I'd always gone to like Duff's, or my family's a big fan of Bocce's. Again, I always love Bocce's. Bocce's and Duff's were great. I did have Gabriel's Gate a couple weeks ago. The first chicken wings that I've had since living in Buffalo.
Okay.
Phenomenal. Some of the best wings I've ever had. Oh, and Barbell. I had Barbell it was 2 years ago. So yeah, love the chicken wings. Plan to eat more. Never had them in Richmond because they were terrible. But Richmond does have good food. We were just talking about this a little bit off camera. We've got great southern fare. So if we're on the chicken genre, like fried chicken in Richmond is pretty strong. So we don't make good wings, but we make really good fried chicken. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Richmond's got a lot of different variety of food. So I don't know if there's like one particular thing that we just do that's out of this world. Not like pizza and wings in Buffalo.
Sure.
So
yeah. Good to know. So lots of variety, good Southern options.
A great Southern option.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So as we're kind of closing out our time, where can we find you? Obviously, you are a part of 43 North. You are on our 43 North website. Yeah. But where else can folks find you if they either want to follow you on Twitter, LinkedIn, website, something like that? Where are you hanging out the most?
LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. It's all the same username, Costanzo DR.
Okay.
I'm not that entertaining, so take it with a grain of salt. But would love to interact over social. Twitter's my go-to.
Okay.
Definitely check me out on Twitter, Costanzo DR.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again so much for joining us today. It was great to continue this conversation.
Likewise.